All right, let's keep going with these equations. So we're trying to solve for x, so I'm going to start by adding 1 to both sides. So I have 2 cosine squared x equals 1. I'm going to divide by 2. And then I have cosine squared, so I need to take the square root of both sides. So I get cosine x equals, remember I introduced the square root, so it's plus or minus. Let's try and draw that so you can actually read it. Square root of 1 is 1, and the square root of 2 is root 2. And we'll just leave it that way. Don't worry about rationalizing it. Okay, we want to figure out what this angle is, so we're going to draw our triangles. Okay. Remember that all students take classes. This means they're all positive in the first quadrant. Cosine's positive here, which means cosine's negative in the other two. But I have cosine as plus or minus. So if cosine is positive, that means I'm either in the first quadrant or the fourth quadrant. And if cosine is negative, that means I'm either in the second quadrant or the third quadrant. So this one, I'm actually going to draw 4 different triangles. All right. So let's start with the one in the first quadrant. Cosine is adjacent and hypotenuse. So the adjacent side is 1. The hypotenuse is root 2. And we recognize that special right triangle. This is a 45-degree angle. So our first solution is 45 degrees. Now, this is the exact same triangle in every quadrant. You don't have to rewrite all the sides. This is a 45. Oh, goodness. I can't read that at all. This is a 45-degree angle. But remember, I want to measure from here. So I get into the second quadrant. So if I take 180 minus 45, that's 135. This is a 45-degree angle, but I want to measure from here. So from here all the way around, it's going to be 180 plus 45, so 225. And then this one is also a 45-degree angle, but I need to measure all the way from here. So when I do that, I get 315. So this one actually has 4 different solutions. I think they wanted these in radians. So pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, 5 pi over 4, and 7 pi over 4. All right, last one, number 11. This one looks a little bit different. It's not too bad. We're going to start by getting all the signs together. So I'm going to subtract 3 sine x from both sides. So that gives me 3 sine x equals 2. And if I divide both sides, I get sine x equals 2/3. Okay, let's draw this. So again, we're thinking all students take classes. This tells us that they're all positive in the first quadrant and sine is positive in the second. I have positive 2/3, so that means I am in either the first quadrant or the second quadrant. Okay, so this is telling me that sine is opposite and hypotenuse. So the opposite side is 2 and the hypotenuse is 3. This is not one of my special right triangles, okay? So to find that angle, I am actually going to have to use my calculator on this one, okay? So in the calculator, you're going to do the inverse sine of 2/3, okay? Let me get my calculator. Inverse sine of 2/3. My calculator's in degree mode. I'm just going to round to the nearest degree. So it's telling me this is a 42-degree angle. Your calculator is going to give you the one here in the first quadrant. Now remember, we also have one over here. So this is also 42 degrees, but we want to measure from here. So to find that, we're just going to take 180 minus 42. So 138. So when you do inverse sine in your calculator, it's going to give you the first quadrant one. You have to do the work to figure out the one in the other quadrant. Now, if you want to convert these to radians, you still can, just like we did on the other ones. Just multiply this by pi over 180 and multiply this by pi over 180. And that will give you your answer in radians. And you could actually do it. Go ahead and multiply the pi and just give it as a decimal answer. This is 0.73 radians. And this one is 138 times pi over 180. This one's 2.4 radians. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense with inverse trig functions. If you have questions on any of these or any of the activities or the homework, please, please, please post a question for me and I will be happy to address it for you.